Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2024 gothic horror film Nosferatu. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Brock for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. A link to all three is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Nosferatu is directed by Robert Eggers, and Robert Eggers is considered by many film fans and critics to be a modern day auteur. This up and coming, amazing director who is so talented and so skilled that everything that he touches turns to gold. I don't get it. It's a very controversial take, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to disagree with me in the comments, but I really don't get it. I don't understand why he is considered to be like the next Christopher Nolan or the next big thing as a director or as a filmmaker. I think he's definitely skilled. I think he definitely has talent as a director, but I don't see this memorable, amazing, stunning filmmaking prowess. I really don't see that. I've seen The Witch, wasn't super particularly impressed with the way that that film was shot, or the way that the film was directed, or the film in general. I felt the same way about a good chunk of direction in The Northman, although I would say that The Northman is still a film that I would probably have to admit is the best film that I've seen by Robert Eggers so far, but it's still not what I would consider to be a personal favorite. And then with Nosferatu, honestly, out of the three films that I've seen directed by him, because I haven't seen The Lighthouse yet, this is the least impressive visually. Um, I've seen a lot of indie horror films that had direction that were on par with what Eggers ultimately brought to the table with Nosferatu and what he provided with this film. Now, that's not to say it's bad, but I don't think it's Oscar worthy. I don't think it's astounding either. There are some shots that I definitely do feel did a good job evoking a certain kind of atmosphere and mood. That seems to be something he's really adept at, and Nosferatu is no exception to that. There are some cool looking shots here and there in terms of how he plays with shadows in particular, and how he utilizes the camera when he's trying to do a little bit more with it. The film visually is at its best when Eggers is actually trying to do more with the camera other than just have it just essentially stay in the same place or just the same stock set of movements. Almost like he deliberately shot the film as if he was shooting a silent movie, or he was stuck with the same kind of limitations as a film from the 1920s, but I don't really understand what the point of that is, to be perfectly honest. And the way he framed his shots in particular was very inconsistent to me. There were moments where the framing worked, but there were a ton of moments for me personally where it was just awkward and too stodgy and too rigid. A lot of medium shots, a lot of shots that made the movie look like it was a stodgy stage play and not a cinematic experience. And there were other shots that completely, in my opinion, honestly took away from the emotion and the overall intensity of scenes. There were some scenes involving Nosferatu, the Count Orlok, that were shot in a way that really took away the intensity. There were other sequences that were supposed to be some pretty big emotional moments that fell flat because of the way that they were framed. There is a scene near the end of the movie where Nicholas Holt's character Thomas he is running to Ellen because he realizes that Orlok is there. He is more than likely at her home and doing God knows what to her. So he's running in a desperate sprint to get to her through the city. And the way that that entire shot was framed was just strange and very stiff and lacked the emotion and the overall intensity that I felt it needed, because most of it was just shot with a medium tight close shot of the face of Nicholas Hoult. It's just a medium tight close shot of Thomas and a little bit of a pained expression on his face as he's running towards her. And that did not work at all to me. That really honestly kind of took me out of that scene because I was like, that's what we cut to? We cut to just an extreme close up? Like, where's the shot of him running? Where's any of that motion? It was just completely gone from the scene. So there's a fair amount of moments like that. Even the way that the uh, uh, final scene with Ellen and Orlok was shot, with them in bed, the way that that was shot was kind of just lacking energy. And so there was a lot of moments like that in this film where I just felt like the shots were just laborious and slow in the way that they were set up by the director. And that works when it comes to some of the establishing shots of the castle, or trying to showcase some of the other more atmospheric elements of the film, or shots like the sequence where it's showcasing an Orlok's grip on the town, and you have this shot that shows the town with the camera pointing down, and then this shadowy hand that's flowing and just gliding over the town. That is a really nice looking shot. And there are moments where I think Eggers got some really interesting and complex performances out of his cast, especially Lily Rose Depp when it comes to the scenes when she's having her fits. And I do feel the claustrophobic nature of the direction does lend itself well to some of the scenes that are trying to be a little bit more cramped and tightly shot to really emphasize the sense of uh, um, loneliness and isolation that um, a lot of characters, a lot of people are feeling in the movie, because a very big theme in this film is about loneliness and isolation and the effect that that has on people. But I think that has its place, and its place is not mostly the entire movie being shot that way. Like it just made it into a film that visually didn't have that extra bit of vitality, didn't have that extra bite to it. And I feel that that's one of many things about this movie that just makes it so just meh to me, and not necessarily this masterpiece that people are making it out to be. Now, the film is also written by Robert Eggers. Eggers to me is a very similar writer as Ari Aster. This is a man who is getting massive praise for his social commentary and his subtext and themes, and not getting nearly enough criticism for how he writes his characters or how he handles a plot in general. Nosferatu is just another script by him that shows me that he hasn't gotten any better when it comes to writing characters or writing a consistently compelling narrative or plot. But at the same time, with the plot thing, I'm not going to be too hard on him because he was saddled with a tough task to begin with. Nosferatu is just Dracula. That's all it is. It's Dracula with different character names. So because of that, you are limited in terms of the type of story that you're telling, and it also has this inherent sense of deja vu. And I've already seen this or been there, done that kind of thing to it. So the fact that it's not particularly that unique isn't necessarily something that I'm going to blame Eggers a lot for. What I will blame him for is not doing nearly enough to put a new spin on this old story, this old tale, because even what he does when it comes to focusing on Ellen is something that the 1979 film directed by Werner Herzog already did. So that isn't even something that is really that unique. Um, the way that he deals with some of the themes in this movie, the way that he shows Ellen having her freakouts and bouts of honestly possession is a little bit different, and that is, in my opinion, fairly refreshing. That injects a little bit of new blood into this old story. And there are some other things that work about it, like the way that it handles the Renfield type character and him being extra vicious, with him biting the head off a bird and biting some guy's neck later. So I think there is definitely something about that really leaves a decent impression, and it feels like it's a little bit little bit different. Her knock, the owner of the brokerage, but there's so much about it that just feels like it's played out and this is the same tired story that we've already seen. And if you're going to do another version of Nosferatu, I don't really see the point if you're not going to put more of an effort in terms of really changing this story. For instance, why not make it about the Van Helsing type character? Why not focus on Eberhard von Franz? Have it be from his point of view and start out with him and him investigating the occult and him getting to the point where he like left his profession or something, and now he is isolated, and then you have somebody, a former colleague of his and a friend of his, that comes to him for help, and then he winds up helping his friend in terms of battling the undead, battling Count Orlok, and then you can throw in, Ellen and Frederick and Thomas and the other characters, and do it in a way that is all, well, no, maybe not all, but mostly from his point of view. Because in all honesty, when that character showed up, this movie really perked up and it had an extra amount of vitality to it. Because I think that character was the most dynamic character out of anyone in this screenplay. So I think that was a missed opportunity to not focus on him, because we don't really see that much. How many films have you seen other than the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie that focus on the Van Helsing character? So I think that really would have been interesting, would have been fun, would have been different. Or if you don't want to do that, focus primarily on the point of view of the Nosferatu himself, Count Orlok. Started out with his perspective, his point of view of everything. That would have been interesting as well. But instead, you just get the same thing that the 1979 film did. And in my opinion, it did it better. I mean, it even threw in the allegory and the overall story plot point about the plague, and talked about underlying themes associated with that. And that is barely a footnote in this screenplay, which was honestly kind of surprising. And it ends in a way where Ellen sacrifices herself in an act of making love with death with Count Orlok, but you never really felt like there was any true passion between the two of them. And I think that might have been the point. That might have been another thing that Eggers was trying to do a little bit differently, but it just made the whole dynamic between Ellen and Orlok very boring and one note, because it's all him just controlling her for the most part, and she's resisting his advances but then succumbs to it. And I think a lot of it is trying to tie into certain themes, which I did notice, but I didn't care. See, that's another problem with this script, is it didn't do that great of a job making you really care about these characters, really get that invested in them, and ultimately care about their fate. So it really makes the movie kind of a slog, because of the fact that you're not really that fully invested in Ellen, in Thomas, in Frederick, in the other like characters like Anna or Dr. Wilhelm Sievers. So that definitely didn't really help this screenplay. But then again, that's something Eggers is really not that good at doing, from what I've seen. He's definitely more of your typical art house filmmaker and writer who puts subtext and themes and social commentary first, and doesn't really put nearly as much effort into the characters or the strength of the plot or the story. And to me, that just makes this movie mostly anemic when it comes to this screenplay. Even the Nosferatu himself in Orlok is written in a way that's very boring. There's next to no dynamic to this Orlok. He's just pure intimidation, and that's it. Just brute force, really. And there's nothing that's tragically romantic about him. There's no amount of sympathy. And the things that you saw in like the 1979 film, where you saw him being feeble and kind of a little pathetic, you don't even get that. This is just a Nosferatu who seems like he's in total control, has all the power, and is just bellowing at the top of his lungs pretty much every scene that he's in. Uh, Very animalistic. And I think that is something that I think could have its benefits. I mean, there were the animalistic moments in Bram Stoker's Dracula, for instance. So Gary Oldman's take on that character, and with the script by Fred, I think Fred Fuchs was involved with it, and there were some other writers. But in Coppola's film, you had that animalistic side of Dracula. I mean, he even turned into a wolf in one scene. But there was that sadder, that somber, that sympathetic, that romantic side. You never got that at all with this Orlok. And you could say you didn't necessarily get that a ton in the 1922 film or in the 1979 movie, but there was more of it. There was still more of an attempt to try to add a little bit more dynamic to Orlok in either version in comparison to this film. And you just don't have that. So it just makes the titular vampire in this into something that really doesn't leave that much of a lasting impression on you. and doesn't really sink his teeth that far into you. It just kind of barely like nibbles at your neck. And I get it. There are themes about isolation and loneliness, and there's some female empowerment stuff, and there's a lot of things. Like there's this thing with Frederick and him. I don't know. It looks like he boned his dead wife. So there's some stuff like that in the script that is trying to deal with some deeper, more disturbing, or more unnerving themes, but it never really, in my opinion, delves into them that deeply. And they don't add that much to the film either. They don't make the story that much more compelling. They don't add that much of a different element to this already familiar story about this vampire and him uh, winding up coming to this town via ship and courting this one woman, and then ultimately having his demise by the end of the movie by sunlight. I mean, it's not really a story in terms of the way that Eggers writes it that feels like it had to be told again. There wasn't anything really that fresh or new or different that he was adding to this old story. It almost felt like he just made this because, hey, I want to make a gothic horror movie. Why did it have to be Nosferatu then? Why didn't you just make another gothic horror inspired film like you've done with all these other movies that you've directed and make something completely original or something that's inspired by Nosferatu, but it stands on its own? But that's not what he decided to do instead. He just made another Dracula adaptation that, we've seen numerous times already. Now, the cast in this film, I personally don't find a lot of the performances here other than the performance by Willem Dafoe as Eberhard von Franz that impressive either. Lily Rose Depp, she's better in this than she was in The Idol, but I mean, that was such a bad performance and such a bad TV show. I mean, she could only go up from there or go up from something like Yoga Hosers, which she was also in, if I remember correctly. And I will give her this, her physical acting when she's having her freakouts and like her eyes are rolling to the back of her head and she's like having her tongue stick out and she's just going crazy with it. That is something that I will give her a lot of praise for. When it comes to the other stuff, eh, it's not any better than any of the side characters I've seen, something like Downton Abbey or some other period piece movie or some drama that took place in the Victorian age. And her accent really wasn't that great. I would say it was better than Winona Ryder and Bram Stoker's Dracula, but that's not really saying much either. And her acting was very stagey. In comparison to some of the other actors in this film, her acting was very much I'm on stage and very theatrical. And I don't think that always necessarily worked. So it led to a very inconsistent and kind of just a middling performance for me. But great physical acting. I, I got I really do feel that she deserves all the praise for that. Nicholas Hoult. Hey, I like Nicholas Hoult. I enjoy him as an actor. I think he's done a lot of great things, done a lot of fun performances. This is one of the most forgettable performances, in all honesty, of his career. And he already did a vampire movie prior to this that I honestly feel was better. Like, I know that might be considered to be a bit of a, you know, a crime for some people, or maybe a crime isn't the right word, but that's controversial. That's a controversial take to have. But I'm sorry, I think he did do better in Renfield than he did in this. His character was a lot more memorable. He had more to work with. This is a very boring performance by him. He spends a good chunk of the movie just looking confused or being scared, and really not that much else other than that. Maybe there's some moments where he's a little bit angry or upset at his wife when she's having one of her freakouts. But other than that, like, it's a performance that's very much down the middle of the road, so, not really that interesting, not really that strong, not really that memorable. But I like him as an actor. But this performance just really didn't do anything for me. But part of it might have just been what he was working with when it comes to the screenplay, because Eggers isn't really that great at writing characters. Uh, Bill Skarsgård is Orlok. Yes, the mustache makes him look like Tom Selleck or Snidely Whiplash or Dr. Robotnik. The mustache, though, really wasn't the problem for me. I just honestly was able to deal with it. Uh, the problem for me was just how over the top he played this character in a way that it was supposed to be taken seriously, though. Like, he's supposed to be taken deathly seriously with his voiceover for Count Orlok, where he's just doing what Gary Oldman did in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but turned up to 11. That's really what his performance is. Like, in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Gary Oldman would say a line like, "I have crossed oceans of time to find you." And Bill Skarsgård's Orlok would be like, "I have crossed oceans of time to find you." Like, that is that is absolutely 100% what his performance is. It's guttural. He even said he was doing like throat singing exercises to get the voice down. All right, bro, but like, come on, man. Like, show me something more. It's literally just one level, one note. It's just, "I am a scary vampire." Like, that's basically all that his voice acting is in this. There's no range. There's no a series of moments or sequences in this film and in this performance where he shows anything other than that one note. The times when he's trying to show some sort of sympathy or pain really don't impress me, or weren't even there. It's basically just, "I am oogity boogity vampire with a mustache and look at my abs." That's basically what most of this performance is by Skarsgård. I was not impressed by this performance either. Is he an intimidating presence? Yes, but that gets old after a while. Like, I want something more. Show me something else than just this constant guttural bellowing, which is all that he really provides when it comes to his performance as Count Orlok. Aaron Taylor Johnson was horribly miscast as Frederick. Like, I did not buy him in this role at all. I like him as an actor. I've warmed up to him considerably after complete dumpster fire performances like in Godzilla as Ford Brody, but this was still not, in my opinion, anything that was really that strong when it comes to his performance in this. Another accent that came and went, and it was just not really a good performance by him. And I really think he was just a poor fit. I think he was just casted because of his name and not because of the fact that he was the right guy for the role. Willem Dafoe, loved him in this. So much so I wish that the movie focused on him. And if you wanna have, the movie focus on Skarsgård, like I said, you could have done that too, but then if the script provided him with more to do than just be this, very, intimidating presence who's just constantly bellowing, either in his native tongue or in English, if you had like moments where he seems human or he used a different tone of voice or there was more inflection or there was more to the character, and then I think that could have been cool too. And I think Skarsgård could have pulled that off, but he was never given any of that to begin with. So I mean there's not much he could do. And the rest of the cast is pretty just other than Simon McBurney, who played Hernock, who I thought was the other performer in the cast who did the best work. At points, he was honestly freakier and more creepy than Skarsgård was as Orlok. Because I can't really say a whole lot about Emma Corrin as Anna or Ralph Ineson as Severs. Like Ralph Ineson just basically played the same role he's been doing in almost anything he's been in for the past few years. So it wasn't really that special of a performance. So yeah, I don't see the amazing slew of performances that other people have with this movie either. And when it comes to the cinematography by Yaron Blaschke, at points, definitely has some striking moments. There is some sizzle here. There are some moments during the winter, in particular at night, that honestly remind me of some of the cinematography in Batman Returns, which is a good thing because that film looks fantastic. So visually, it's another thing about the movie that I think is not too problematic, not too troublesome. The editing by Louise Ford, I think at points the editing is a bit choppy, a bit uneven. Definitely could have used a bit more polish, a little bit more focus. Some scenes drag on for forever and a day. And it's not just because of how they're shot, it's also because of how they're edited. The music by Robin Carolyn really didn't do that much for me. It was just mood and atmosphere music, not really anything that was particularly that strong, that special, that memorable. I think I don't know if there was any like a classic instrumentals that were used for this, like in the 1979 remake, for instance, which used some orchestral work from classical composers, and because of some other things, like there were some makeup effects, and I think you know the makeup on Orlok was good. It was well done. The little bits of gore that you do see in this had some good practical effects. I think the production design and the art direction is great. Definitely looks like a gothic horror movie. Definitely does evoke a lot of that atmosphere. The costuming was very true to the time and to the setting of the film. So a lot of those elements work about the movie, but the story and the characters just really lacked a lot that really made me feel like I was that invested or that compelled or that drawn to what was happening. So as a result, the movie just it felt very slow paced and I was just kind of in and out. Like it was one of those movies where I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. I don't mind that. I like Willem Dafoe. That's a nice looking shot. Oh, that's kind of interesting what they're doing with the themes here." But I wasn't fully invested in the movie. So it's one of those films at the end of the day that I would probably say not really my cup of tea, but I wouldn't say that I hated it. I wouldn't say that it was awful, but there were a lot of things about it that I didn't necessarily care for, and they ultimately made it into just another just meh, just not that special film for me. But that's me. I know there's a lot of people who love this movie. It was one of their favorite films from 2024. And I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I think that's great. But just really wasn't for me. And I only thought it was okay just because of certain technical merits and a couple performances and some of the things about the script that I felt actually were kind of fresh and added a little bit something new to this very tired and old and dusty story of the tale of Dracula. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Nosferatu. And as always, thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.